Building a go-to-market tech stack isn't about choosing the flashiest tool. It's about creating an integrated system that drives alignment, adoption, and measurable impact across the entire revenue engine. As go-to-market teams expand and AI reshapes how we work, the challenge isn't just adding more tools, it's making them work together. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Revenue Lounge podcast. I am your host, Randy Likas, and in today's episode, we will discuss what it really takes to build a dynamic go-to-market tech stack from the ground up. Joining me today is Jamie Edwards. Jamie is the former head of go-to-market operations and tools at Gusto. He's got over 15 years of experience in revenue operations, sales operations, and go-to-market operations, and he's been passionate for implementing scalable strategies at all the companies that he's worked for. He's proficient in developing and executing RevOps strategies and aligning sales, marketing, and customer success teams to optimize revenue generation, among many other things. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talking with you and all of your listeners.
Yeah. So it's a topic that's near and dear to, I think, many people because they've got several tools in their stack, yet there is quite a bit of fragmentation across the marketing, sales, and customer journey applications. So we'll dive into that more in a little bit. But I usually like to start these, Jamie, maybe just walk us through a little about your background and how you got into go-to-market and your career journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like most people who've ended up in this RevOps space, and I won't generalize because I do believe that folks throw around the term RevOps very loosely, and I'm one of those folks who will very passionately say RevOps is not a thing. It is not a job title. There are probably one or two folks who can say, like, I am the head of RevOps, and everyone else within that org structure should be of a very specific team. So my background was mostly sales operations, and I kind of fell into sales operations. I was doing sales, and it wasn't really my passion calling. Like, I knew sales wasn't my end-all be-all, but it was a great opportunity at a great company, and so I loved my time of working in sales at Career Builder, but I knew it wasn't for me. And I figured out that I didn't like being the sales rep who just pounded the phone all day and tried to get someone to schedule a meeting and take a call. And instead, what I tried to do was figure out what had worked for me in the past, like when was the best time to call and who were the folks who were answering my calls, and all of those little nuanceable things. There are so many tools out there now that can help and give you that information for, but back then there wasn't. So I created my own kind of template for what success looked like for me so that I didn't have to do 100 dials in a day. Instead, I was really focused on how do I get the people who will answer the phones, how do I get the people who will set a meeting, and how do I turn those into deals. And that took me from being just an average rep to winning AE of the quarter and really starting to turn things around. And my boss being very astute and realizing at the time that sales was not my jam, asked me two questions. One, could I help other folks on our team do it? And two, had I thought about sales ops? And I didn't even realize we had a sales ops team. I didn't know what sales ops was. But after meeting with some of the folks on the sales ops team and really understanding, like, oh, this thing that I'm doing could actually be done at scale, it really piqued my interest, and that started me down this almost 20-year journey of being in sales operations and then really morphing that and learning the other aspects of it, whether we're talking sales systems or marketing operations or some of these other areas, to really developing this new RevOps brand.
Great. So, JB, I think that makes a lot of sense. And your journey as a sales rep in the past, I think, gives you a unique perspective, at least for what different tools can do and what opportunities it can have to make a seller more productive. I'm curious, though, because I believe your experience has been more than just working with AEs, right? You also look at marketing CS tech as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I own the marketing operations team as well here, and then the customer success team as well for operations. So yeah, I've gotten the opportunity over the course of this time to work across all of those teams. I've actually found it weird when CS operations sits separately than sales operations. I've always thought that was a missed opportunity for companies to not integrate those teams. I believe that those motions go hand in hand. I'm still waiting on the first person to accurately explain to me the difference between what a customer success rep is doing at the operations side that isn't the same as an account manager. The roles are dynamically the same. So it's always interesting when I see CS operations not sit within the same world as sales operations. I think it's a missed opportunity to unify all the systems and tools that we use.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the same could be said for marketing operations as well. There's a lot of organizations that still keep MOPS separately. And I think that also creates some of the challenges of why there's so much silo across the stack, because we're looking at tools in silos as opposed to one unified way to capture data.
100%. You still see these worlds in which marketing operations sits within marketing, and I think it's just a missed opportunity. Marketing is thinking about how you get the leads into the system and how you grow the business from a brand recognition and all of those things, and marketing operations couldn't be further from that. They're making sure that once those things come in, that you're able to route them properly, that you're able to qualify results, that you're able to do all of these things, and it sits more in line with what happens on the RevOps side of the house. So it was really cool to have marketing ops fall within RevOps here at Gusto.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you a question. I think there's a big trend going on right now where you see a lot of the different players in tech specifically. They maybe started with one specific application or area, and they've have since built like a platform, right? I'll just use sales engagement platforms. They're now building CI tools and they're building forecasting capabilities. And I think you've mentioned in the past, like there's a difference between best in class versus maybe the most hyped tools, right? And they aren't necessarily the right fit for your organization. So the question is, how should leaders evaluate whether a tool aligns correctly with their go-to-market motion or the business objective, as opposed to maybe being that flashiest or most popular tool on the market?
Love this question. So this is one I think sparked a lot of conversation amongst the people that I know in sales and within the RevOps community. I did a post not too long ago about it, and I think a question that has to go back to the heart of like how you think about your business. Do you believe wholeheartedly in your strategy? Meaning that irregardless of a tool, if all of our tools went dark tomorrow, do I have the strategy in place for my team to be able to succeed? Meaning, hey, if I gave them a phone and a phone book and very old school way of doing it, could my team still hit its number? And a lot of folks will say, well, that's not realistic. And I would argue that it is realistic. You have all of these companies that are spinning up right now that don't have huge budgets and aren't out there buying the newest, latest, greatest tools, and they're growing ridiculously fast. And that's because they've doubled down on having the right process. They believe in what it is that they are currently doing. And then they will add tools to supplement that work. I think this reliance on the latest and greatest and all of these things, it's really setting the work that sellers do back. I think we're at this point in time where we buy the sizzle, to use another throwaway term, but it's one of those things where I truly believe there's maybe 1% to 2% difference between any of the best tools out there. I think that one tool may do this thing really, really well, and then the next tool that does that exact same thing doesn't do that thing really, really well, but they do this other thing over here really, really well. And for you, you have to figure out for your business, like take a step back and say, what are we doing today that we absolutely would not change for the world? And then you go and you find a tool that helps you do something that maybe you're not doing as well, and it's just amplifying what your sellers are doing or what your CS folks are doing or what your marketing team is doing, versus just going out there and buying the new tool that obviously sellers are going to tell you, we're the greatest since sliced bread, we are the best thing going, we are like water. And the truth is, once you get that tool in, you start to see, wow, this tool doesn't really implement with the rest of my tech stack. And now you have to make that really tough decision. Yeah. Am I changing my entire tech stack for this one tool, or am I using the sunk cost and saying, all right, I'm going to, I bought this tool, but we're not going to fully implement it because it doesn't work well with all of our other tools, and then we'll buy something else in 6 months or a year or 2 years. So it's really being thoughtful about what's working well within your business and what you really need before going headfirst into buying the next great tool.
So if you were to have to build a tech stack from the ground up today, and you didn't have to worry about maybe tech debt of applications you're locked into contracts with or anything else, what are some of the core principles or foundations that you would prioritize to ensure that scalability or that operational excellence that you're looking for?
Ooh, okay. So if I'm building from scratch, the first thing that I think I do is a CRM. you start with the hub that should be the thing that your sellers are using to, organize their day, but also equally as important, that's the place that you want your sales leadership team being able to see what's happening within the business, how things are going, what activity looks like, what sales look like, what opportunities are out there, where you're at in the pipeline and all of that. So I think I start with a really strong CRM. I'm not going to name any particular one. I will just say start with a really good CRM. From there, you start to ask these questions of what type of a sales organization are you? Now, if you're an enterprise sales org, I think a cadence management tool is absolutely needed. I think for high velocity teams, they overcomplicate things by adding these cadence managements. And when I talk about the cadence managements, for the folks who are listening who may not be informed on those, I'm thinking like your sales lofts, your outreaches. I think all of those are super useful tools. They're terrible tools, and I'm willing to say that, for high velocity sales teams. Because the nature of your business is more of the one touch, one close, or maybe one or two touches. Should be very basic follow-up that your CRM can handle. Having a cadence management tool for those types of deals are usually problematic. But when you're talking about enterprise deal where there are multiple leads and contacts and you're doing multiple meetings, you're doing maybe 2 or 3 demos, and you need to go back and do all of that, you do need something to keep that order of when was the last time, when do I need to follow up again, what's next, do I skip this step, being able to pause a person in a sequence, like all of that's really important. So I think I start there. The one place that I probably hold off, which may be surprising for a lot of folks, are like BI style tools. So Power BI, Tableau. I think those tools are fantastic later. They're fantastic when you have this ton of data that's coming in and you're trying to cross-reference your leads and opportunities to the amount of marketing leads that are coming in to close one data. When you're doing that high-level analysis much later on in the company stage, I think folks want to go out there and start building these pretty dashboards on day one. And the truth of the matter is, you could probably do 90% of that in Salesforce for what it is that you're truly trying to solve for. So I think that's the core of where I start. And then from there, I really just sit back and evaluate what's going on, where do we see gaps, and I would continue to build out from there.
There's so much to unpack there. Okay, let's start with the CRM for a moment. And I agree with you that starting with the CRM, as maybe we've heard it before, maybe it's not as important today, maybe it is around your source of truth and your one place. And you've got sales engagement is one example of an application that lives outside of CRM, but writes some things back, right? CS, you've got all your CS tools, Gainsight and Tatango and everyone else. So I'm curious, how important is it to you that how much data needs to be written back to Salesforce, to your CRM as your system of truth, as opposed to it maybe partial write back of some information, but having data also live outside of there? And what are the trade-offs of the two?
This is the great debate that's happening right now, and this is where we get to the AI portion of the conversation a little bit early. It really depends on what your company's long-term strategy. I'm hearing at a lot of orgs, folks are really diving in on the AI piece, and in order to do that, what they are starting to realize is, depending on the CRM tool that you're using, you can't just tie in a OpenAI or any of these other AI tools. They have to have another data source that they can absorb this information from, just because tools like Salesforce have their own proprietary Einstein and all of these companies that are out there. So the whole idea of writing back to Salesforce with some of these other tools is interesting, because if you have another kind of company-wide source of truth, then that's probably, you don't always necessarily want to copy what is in that source of truth back into Salesforce. You don't want to muddy the water. Salesforce is a very expensive data management tool, is the joke in sales ops. You don't want to just push a lot of information in there because you're charged for all of that information that you're just housing in there. So if you have a different source of truth, if you have a data warehouse or something else that you're utilizing to maybe be the brains of the things that's happening, I would maybe write more information there. Or if you have a tool that your company or that your clients are going into and feeding information, I'd maybe use that before I would just pushing things back into Salesforce.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next thing I want to unpack in your last answer was this question around if you're an enterprise sales motion, right? You got that, and the importance of having like a cadence type of a tool. One thing that I've experienced and what I've heard a lot is for sure those tools have their place for maybe SMB to commercial segment, but as you get into an enterprise motion and those sales cycles a little bit are more bespoke, and you just look at how seasoned and tenured those reps might be, they struggle with adoption. They don't use sequences the way that maybe a down market rep because I'm stuck in old practices or old habits or whatever it might be. But yet I do believe that there's a place for the sequences in that motion, a follow-up sequence just to keep me on track and things like that. So the question is, how do you make sure that you're designing your systems and your processes properly for adoption when you're looking at maybe the different experience or season of the rep?
Yeah, so this is where I get to be a little bit philosophical. One of the things that I often say when it comes to sales is when you think of sales, you should think of your sellers like artists. And anyone who's ever been in the arts, whether it's music or painting or dance or anything else, like you realize the way that you do your thing is very unique to the way that you do your thing. And one of the great things about being in RevOps, it's our job to let the artist be an artist. But it is our jobs to provide them with the things that they need to be that artist. So if you're a painter, I need to make sure you have the right canvas. I need to make sure you have the right type of paint, whether it's oil-based or whatever. Like whatever it is that you like to do, that is what I need to be able to provide to you so that you're not worried about and thinking about that. So when you think about a cadence management tool, one of the reasons that you have the answer that you gave there where folks push back and they say it's not really for more of your tenured folks, it's because in the past, we've put everyone into one box. And instead of saying, hey, you seller who's been doing this for 20 years, who understands this one account that you've had for the last decade, instead of giving that person the ability to customize their cadence for that company to say, hey, I know that I only follow up with this person once every 6 months. I know that I only follow up with this person in marketing once every quarter, whatever the case may be. I'm going to build a customized cadence for those teams, for those folks to be able to do that. Instead, what happens is RevOps, sales enablement, builds out these cadences and they say everything else is locked down. You got to drop someone into one of these cadences. And if you're not in one of these cadences, you're out of compliance, and now you got to go through compliance training on utilizing a cadence. That's nonsense. That's foolishness. You cannot create and treat these sellers who've been doing this for forever the same way you would maybe someone who's never sold a day in their life and they're fresh out of college and this is their first sales job. There has to be that give and take with your teams and a better understanding of how and why they're using these tools. And once you start to really build that and build that trust with folks, always providing guardrails, making sure that folks aren't able to just go and drop in 100 cadences for 100 different companies with 100 different lengths of time. But as long as there are guidelines there and some protocols to follow, I think giving your sellers the ability to customize those things in a way that makes sense for them will get you the results that you're looking for, because folks do like using that. It's amazing how many folks are not using cadence management tools, but then using an Excel and then mapping that back and then going to their calendar to schedule time. It's the exact same thing, just manual. But we've made these tools so unfriendly to use because of the way that we've decided to lock them down, that these really amazing sellers who know what they want to do but just don't have the ability to freelance and do it have now just gone back to doing what they used to do 15 years ago.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Okay, so next question, and I think you'll be a unique person to answer this because you overlook not just the AEs and the SDRs, but marketing side. So we'll often hear a struggle, and I'm just curious what your opinion of this is. So marketing's got a marketing automation platform that they use, an ABM platform that they use, and then the sellers have their cadence management tool. They've got, and what's common to all this is CRM, right? They've got their cadence management tool, maybe they've got their CI tool, they've got their forecasting tool, and then CS has their CS tool. And the struggle that I've heard is that because we have all these different tools serving all these different functions, it's really difficult for us to tie it all together, right? So like, who's influencing a deal, right? We know those people that are coming in and out of influence of the deal. How do we tie that back to who we've targeted in our campaigns? Or the deal sold, it's now passed over, the CS person is managing it, they're talking with the admin of the tool, but not necessarily the people that made the decision or the people that can influence some of the expansion of other products. And so there's a frustration with not having it in one place because it's there, it's just locked up in different systems. How do you overcome that?
Man, I think this is like a billion-dollar question because I think the person who's actually able to solve this will become a billionaire. I don't know that anyone's ever solved it. It's the reason there are so many models out there today where it's like, oh, well, how do we give proper credit for marketing for warming up a lead versus sales who warmed up a lead? What was the last thing that we used, the last touch model or the recency biased, or how did it come in versus what was the last thing it interacted with? There are all of these different things. I think this kind of goes back to one of your previous questions. What data are you writing back to Salesforce, or where are you writing data back to inform those later down the line teams, whether you're talking about your account management team or your CS team, to say, what was the flow of that sale? What did it look like? Who were the folks who were involved? Who were the primary decision makers? Who were the secondary decision makers? And this is where I will plug utilizing a CRM in the right way. And this goes for both the seller as well as your sales ops team who are going in there and managing the system on the back end. Giving folks the options of putting in the proper field designation. So, hey, if someone is an administrator, making sure they're tagged as an administrator. If someone is a decision maker, having that as a designation within your Salesforce, key decision maker, not a user, having information that allows for CS teams to say, great, now I know that the person who is administering the tool wasn't actually involved in the buying process. So it might mean me doing a full-on coaching session around how to utilize the tool, what are some of the features, what are all the things that we need. Whereas if this person has been involved the entire process, hey, I know you may not have been the decision maker, but you've been involved all the way up to this point. These are all the cool things about the feature. We can jump in to a more in the weeds, how to use the system versus that very high level, almost we're both meeting each other for the first time, first date type of situation.
Right.
I think being able, though, to really give that tie back of who did what and why, I think we're all still shooting for that. I think we're doing the best possible models. I think AI is helping a lot with that now because it can spin up some models, but I don't know that it's truly answering the question holistically of whether sales should get the attribution or marketing or your friend around the corner who had a referral.
Yeah. So is there a way to measure common KPIs or common frameworks in which you can measure the return of these different technologies that you've had? And if so, what have you used in the past that's been successful? Because all these tools are come at a pretty hefty price point, right? So you got to be able to show return for them. Is there anything that you do to say, these are the shared KPIs across different functions, and regardless of the tool, like we should be trying to hold these as like the North Star and then evaluating the tools that way? Or is there a different way that you look at it?
Ooh, interesting question. I really think it depends on the tool and what it is that we're solving for, or what the new tool is going to be solving for. And I'll give you a very specific example. So Gusto has some very specific types of routing that needs to happen within our world. For those who are unfamiliar about Gusto, we are a payroll services provider that do things like 401k on top of just your normal payroll services and things like that. But we also primarily serve small businesses. That doesn't mean we only serve small businesses, but the vast majority of the people who are coming in are small businesses. And this comes in from the co-founders really have a passion for that segment of the world. And if you've ever seen Josh talk about his love for small businesses, you will absolutely get it. And I can tell you firsthand that that is not just for the cameras, that is behind the scenes. He truly believes the mission of eradicating customer pain and doing things for small businesses that allow for them to go and run their business and not think about things like payroll and things like that. Enough of a spiel on Gusto, but one of the things that happens there is we have a lot of really dynamic routing that happens for these small business customers in these segments, whether you're sub 25 employees or more than 25, or in a specific, do you work with accounting firms or not accounting firms? So we have all these small, unique triggers that have to happen on the back end. there are the big players in the game that do routing. A lot of it is very complex. So we were trying to figure out a situation that allowed for our routing to be more dynamic and did not have us doing what we were having to do, which was these large swath, let all of the leads come into one aggregated place if it wasn't a clearly, easily routed lead, and then someone from the marketing ops team or someone from the sales ops team would go in, bucket those, and then round robin them. That's a terrible system. It was mind-numbingly bad. But then there was a company that popped up that was able to do this thing called dynamic routing. And they were able to do things like, hey, if someone hasn't touched the lead within X amount of time, we can take that lead and move it to someone else and send triggers and do all of these things. And it's like, whoa. So for us, that was an easy thing to quantify as why we would pick up utilizing this new tool, because this was solving for something that was eating up hours and hours of sales operation and marketing operation time. This was a repeatable task that we could pass off to a new tool doing this thing. And for us, the value in giving a valuable asset like sales operations and marketing operations time back in their day to do something else, like win. That's a win for being able to go and do that. So for us, sometimes it comes down to dollars and cents, but sometimes it comes down to whether or not the resources that we have that are supposed to be force multipliers when you're thinking about sales ops, marketing ops, those operational teams. Those teams are supposed to be helping your other teams be better at their job. So if we can always give those teams time back, it's worth it to invest in a team or a tool.
I'm glad you actually called that out, because a lot of times the tools are always meant for the end. A lot of times you're thinking about what the end benefit is to the end user, but the internal teams, right? The operational teams and the people who have to maybe pull the data from different sources in order to have the right dashboards in place, like that's a lot of time. And when activities or events get mapped to the wrong opportunity, the amount of manual time that's spent cleaning that up is significant. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, which leads me into my next question, which is around AI and where you see the opportunities are for AI, because every single tool out there is going to be talking about their AI capabilities, right? And that's using AI within the walls of their own product. Yet we're also seeing a lot of companies who are like, we want to build our own custom go-to-market AI applications. We need to have the right data in order to do that. I would love to hear your perspective in terms of where you see the future of AI, not just for end sellers, but also for the operations teams themselves.
Yeah, I think AI can definitely be a game changer for companies, but I want to preface that a little bit. There's this urge right now for everyone to say, we got to make AI everything. Like, no matter what it is, it's like, oh, when someone logs on, we should use AI. Or we still need sellers to be sellers. We still need marketers to be marketing. We still need folks to do the things that are unique to them, that they have a unique talent for doing. We have not gotten to a place in which AI is this all-seeing, all-knowing being. You get out of it what is put into it. So is it able to process things faster? Absolutely. So I think right now what we should be using AI for are things like automating repeatable tasks, taking some of the decision making away. So if you are using a CRM that has automatic call summary, for instance, or video summary, where it can pull out those tasks that was said, like, oh, it heard Jamie mention a follow-up call in a week at 9 o'clock. It knows to go in there and pre-schedule that and have that ready for you to go. So that's not something you have to remember or have in your notes. Being able to do things like that. What I don't believe is going to happen, and one of the things that I'm seeing folks fall for, is that AI can do any and everything, and it's going to streamline and speed everything up. I'm seeing where AI kind of slows down some processes because of processing time. I'm seeing that AI isn't able to answer every question, and instead of someone trying to figure it out on their own, they're waiting for AI to come up with this answer around it. They're asking the question in like 9 different ways, or you can go try to figure it out yourself. So I think it's figuring out the balance between, this might be a bad analogy, but someone else said it to me recently and I'm going to use it. The ultimate goal should be the way that anyone who's been doing accounting or RevOps for the last 15-ish years, the way we all felt when enhancements came out to Excel and G Sheet. When you could pre-code all the things that you want into a G sheet. And now, instead of me having to copy paste and do all of these things, I can enter in one set of numbers and everything else populates.
Yep.
That's how we should be thinking about AI. It shouldn't be this replace all of everything. I saw someone talk about like, oh, AI was able to write this thing for me that used to take me 4 hours to do. It now takes seconds to do. And I say, great. That shouldn't mean that you got 4 hours back. What that should mean is that you took 20 minutes of the 4 hours that you got back and you double check what AI wrote. Because it is only going to do it so well. If you can't take 20 minutes to reread everything that it wrote and say, oh man, this is great. Or, hey, I caught something that is a little bit funky in this. Hey, use that time. And now you still have 3 hours and 40 minutes to go and do something else really, really awesome. But I think folks are just thinking that AI, or some folks, I won't say all, but some folks believe that AI is just going to be this, I can replace people. And AI right now is just a probabilistic model. It's doing things, and I think when we see these terms like it's hallucinating, it's not hallucinating. It's doing just like people do. It's faking it until it makes it. It's giving you a guesstimate of what it thinks the answer should be, and that's the reason when you go back and correct it on something that you know to be true, almost immediately it says, oh yeah, you're right. Here's the right answer, because you gave it more context and it was able to pull a better answer based on the information, the additional information you provided.
Yeah.
So I think my stance on AI is it's going to be great. It should be used as a tool to enhance and help folks to do more faster and better. But if we just keep believing that it is going to be this thing that I can replace 500 people with like one AI machine, you're going to be so greatly disappointed over the course of the next few years. And then you're going to be doing like we're seeing a lot of companies do today, which is hurriedly rehire people back because they went all in on AI 18 months ago and it has not lived up to that belief of what it is.
Yeah, you're bang on. I agree with all of that. I want to double click on something that you mentioned earlier, which is the data warehouse and what information you put into the data warehouse, because I think that's also one of the reasons why AI apps or AI applications, that the way that they've been deployed today is maybe failing in some instances, because AI is only as good as the data it has access to, it has available to it, right? And I think what we're seeing is a lot of companies are starting to push as much data as they can into a data warehouse where they can look at different sets of data and let AI use their models across the different sets of that. So you had mentioned the data warehouse. I'm curious, how important is it for you to be able to pull the data out of the different tools that we've talked about today and put it into a data warehouse where you can cross-tabulate, or at least make the data available in a model in which we can look at different data sets together to help AI function better?
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And I think that's one of the reasons why I gave a little bit of a pushback on like pushing everything into Salesforce or writing back into Salesforce, because I do believe that maybe having a centralized hub where everything lives. What I would, again, maybe push back in a different way on is, so even when I think about this question of, hey, like putting all of your data into a place so that AI can build off of these models. And the problem that we have there is nuance matters. AI will see that there was a dip in, the year 2000. And if it's just looking at your models, like let's think of these large language models that are not looking at the whole of the internet. So not like a ChatGPT or a Gemini or Claude or anything else, but like we were talking about, folks are building models that are specific to live in their data. Or if you think of a notebook LM where you can just plug stuff in that is from your source of truth. Well, the problem with that is if you don't give it additional context to know that, hey, there was a COVID-19 period of time in which sales really spiked for some companies or really dipped for other companies based on this one particular thing. And now it has this weird outlier in its data that it's trying to calculate why this happened, or it's trying to account for without any of that additional context on why.
Yeah.
Did you grow your sales team? Did you do all of these things? So it's not having the full picture. And this is another reason why I say I think AI can help to visualize that very quickly, but without the added context of someone who was around during that time to say, hey, here's what we did during that time that caused X, Y, and Z to happen.
Yes.
Oh, that now makes sense. You're feeding additional information. That doesn't live in your data today. If you dumped everything out of Salesforce into a data repository and had an AI model just build off of that, it would not know unless a rep notated on every single one of its deals during that time period.
Yeah.
Close lost because of COVID, or close won because of additional COVID spend. You're not going to have that additional contextual knowledge. I'm a big fan of what we can do with these systems, but I think context matters, and being able to provide that context is where people are still going to win.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think what you're saying is also very important, which is that context that doesn't necessarily live in the data or the system is where the human still has to be involved to provide that, right? So AI, it's going to process and it's going to analyze that data maybe much faster, and it's going to bring those different data sets together, yet the context that only really a human can have, which is, well, yeah, that reason why that spiked here is because we were in a COVID period or whatever it might be, right?
Exactly. And it's just those little bitty nuanceical things that, again, once you give it that context, it will be able to take that. But anyone who's been in leadership for any period of time knows that you have these one-off meetings with members of your team all the time where you find out something that happened in a meeting that wasn't in the notes, and you're like, great, I now know this going forward. That now makes this other interaction that I had over here make so much more sense. Yeah. And that's the world. So I think we can dump all of this data into places to have things readily available, but you still need those little moments that only could be captured by the human experience, and humans being and having those calls and things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I'm being cognizant of time here, and I want to make sure we have some time to move to our lightning round, which is a little bit more fun and formal and personal. Let's do that. The question I usually like to start with the lightning round with is, what's the favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job has been the team, growing my team, all the different personalities, all the different folks. I have folks who are in their first couple of years of doing sales ops and have all the wide-eyed questions of like, why do we do this? Or why don't we do this? Or man, it'd be great to do this. Going back to the context things of not knowing, we actually tried that a year ago. This is why it didn't work, or all of these things, all the way up to folks who've been doing this for 20 plus years and have differing levels of super excited about a project or super jaded about a project. But getting to work with all the different personalities and learning something new every day, that is probably the thing that makes me the happiest when I think about it, as I'm smiling right now thinking about
I see it for sure. Okay, well, there's always going to be a flip side of that question, right? Which is least favorite, or I often ask it a little bit different way. So what's the hardest part of your job?
Man, this is going to be somewhat controversial in the way that I say it. Not being fast-tracked into leadership, meaning I grinded my way out as a sales ops analyst at the beginning and did that for a really long time before my first managerial role, and now getting into the levels that I get to be at now. One of the things that I believed then that I now still believe, there are so many meetings that could have been an email. There are so many meetings that should be Slacks. My not quite billion-dollar idea, but my multi-million-dollar idea for anyone who wants to use ChatGPT or some other tool to code this is every company should have a meeting calculator in which every meeting that gets scheduled through G-Meeting should have total cost of that meeting based on the average salary of people there. Now, it would only calculate it if there are 3 or more people. That way you don't know whose salary is what. But it should show you the cost of every meeting. Yeah. And I guarantee you, if that happened, we would have so many fewer meetings, because the justification, and at the end of every week, that total would get sent as an email to either the board or your senior executives or all of that, to be like, yeah, you were averaging $23,000 per meeting this week. I think if folks started seeing that in time and seeing like how many 30+ person meetings there are in which 90% of the people don't say a word on that call, I think it would instantly give folks so much more time to work, because there are too many meetings. Stop all the meetings. You're not that important. None of us are. Like, that is my rant on the West.
You're 100% correct. You remind me of a story that we had worked there with a client on, which is we're working with their CS team, and their CS team would have all these meetings with their clients, like bi-weekly check-ins, right? And if you look across the organization, the amount of time that was being spent, even if it was just the CSM, on meetings that could be summarized in an email or put together in a slide and say, hey, if you want to talk about this, we can deep dive on it. But we're wasting 30 minutes to an hour with these meetings where it's just like, it could be served just through an email, but the default is just let's have the meeting. And you look at that, like this particular company had about 500 CSMs, and you look at how much money they're spending with that, especially with just the admins of the tool, not people have like necessarily the influence to expand. There's a significant amount of money that they could just save by just like moving those biweekly check-in meetings to moving it to an email and using that time in a different way. I went off on a little bit of a side tangent here, but what you just shared reminded me of that. All right, so 2 more questions for you. What advice do you give to somebody maybe on your team or someone who is in RevOps who's maybe early in their career and they want to have your job someday or they want to look for how they can advance? What advice might you give them that they could do today to help them in the future build into a position like yours?
Yeah. So ironically enough, I have a 3-year-old at home, and my son's favorite show right now and thing is Thomas the Tank Engine. And one of the sayings in the show, I've started saying at work, and whenever the conductor does anything with any of the trains, they always say, you are a really useful engine today. And it's one of those things like, be useful, be very helpful. Don't be the person that never has a question and that cannot solve for a problem. Be willing to put yourself out there. Radical candor got misused years ago when that book came out, but I think there were some really good principles there in being very candid, but also being able to find answers to problems and solutions. Like, folks want to work with people who are willing to go and solve problems, not folks who just want to complain about the problem.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to get into RevOps, always be looking to solve a problem, always be looking to advance the ball forward. If you're able to be useful, folks will figure out a reason to work with you.
Yeah, great advice. All right, last question has nothing to do with work, but what do you do to decompress when you're not spending your working hours trying to solve problems internally?
I'm a big sports guy. I love sports. It is like my favorite thing ever. My lovely wife allowed for me to do the multiple TV setup in the basement. So I have the really cool TV view, which is great for Saturday and Sunday football. My son, like I said, is 3.5, and he just started T-ball, and they asked if I would coach. So I am coaching a 3-year-old T-ball team, which is so relaxing, fun, because I realize the importance of patience and just having fun with all the things that are going on. It's the hive mentality. One hits the ball and everyone chases the ball, even the person who hit the ball. So it's the best possible thing to do. So I get to spend a lot of time with sports and my son, and spending time coaching right now.
My daughter is 6, and she was in her first year of T-ball this past spring. What you just described is 100% what I experienced, which is like, it doesn't matter where the ball goes. It doesn't even go to the pitcher's mound, but every single player runs to the ball. They're so excited, right? But just seeing their energy is great. I love it as well. So, well, listen, Jamie, I really think this was a great conversation. The examples you had gave and some of the nuance you provided was wonderful. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know the audience will love it as well. We're both local here outside of Chicago, so let's find some time maybe to get together for a coffee or something over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I'd love it.
All right. Sounds great. Well, that's another episode of the Revenue Lounge. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Take care.